Hello! So I am going to do my literacy memoir reflection here. Give me a little bit of leeway because I am using notes here. So I just wanted to start off. My name's Melissa Garcia, and this is a literacy memoir reflection about literacy events that happened in my life from early childhood to adulthood, where I'm at now. So I'll start off briefly describing each event. And the first one I'm going to start with is early childhood. So when I was in preschool, about 4 years old, we were to draw a picture of our favorite song. And I drew the song, There's a Tear in My Beer. So I went to a little private school, Trinity Lutheran School, and my parents got called to the principal to discuss this issue because I had drawn a very small person up in the right-hand corner of the paper with a big tear dropping into a very large can that said beer on it. So that was my first event that happened. That was early childhood, so I was 4 years old. The next part was discuss how these events may have been experienced differently by others. Well, most kids who probably had to draw a picture of their favorite song loved it. And I'm not going to say I didn't love it. I don't really remember. I'm not going to lie. I was 4. I didn't see anything wrong with it. It was my favorite song. I sang it with my mom and dad all the time. I do know, I'm sure my teachers thought it was very inappropriate also. But at the time, my parents understood the importance of it, but they also kind of laughed it off. They were young parents, and they listened to music and country music that was on the radio. So they weren't ashamed that I knew that song. And then, I don't know, I guess I feel like probably my teachers should have been fairly impressed that I was 4 years old and knew how to spell the word beer. So, personal opinion, if I teaching, I might think that also was inappropriate, but I would try to look at the good part of that they could spell beer. So discuss my insights into how these events and reflections connected to my teaching this semester. So, I can make a connection that kids sometimes say and write inappropriate things, but try to look at why and try to understand, or try to look at if they understood what they were writing. And also, I drew that for a reason. And if you don't want kids to have the choice of what they're going to draw, then be very specific and don't give them a choice. So I drew There's a Tear in My Beer. At the time I sang the song with my parents, I didn't probably realize it at the time what the song was about, but my dad was an alcoholic, and my mom cried when my dad drank beer. So I think that that's more so what I was writing about, but it was a song. It was a favorite song. So that was a connection that I made. And as far as connection between my teaching experiences this semester, so I had a girl who drew a picture of a donkey farting. And that might seem inappropriate to some people, but to me, and for the lesson that we were teaching, I knew that she understood what I was teaching. It was a little bit of a vulgar picture, but I understood exactly what she meant by it. I actually thought it was funny, but so there's a connection for that. My next photo on my literacy memoir, I don't know, incidents or whatever, was elementary school. So that's the next category. So when I was in 2nd grade, I had a teacher. Her name was Mrs. Thompson, and she would every once in a while let us do our spelling tests in pudding on our desks. Coolest thing ever. Loved it. So we put wax paper down. She'd give us a cup of pudding, and then we would get to spell our spelling words in there for the test. We could help each other, and that was fun. We could kind of talk instead of a regular spelling test where we had to sit there quietly and, not say anything. So that was a fun thing for me. Something that I remember, like the activity was great. So how this event might have affected others. Some kids might have been disgusted by the feeling of the pudding. I don't remember anyone in my class being disgusted by it, but I could see how that could happen. One thing I never thought about as a kid, but I think about now reflecting on it, is some kids might have been very embarrassed that we could help each other on the spelling test. Previously, or when we didn't do this, spelling tests were very private. You did your own paper, you got your own grade. It didn't matter what anyone else got, what you got. So I can see how that might have kind of been embarrassing for some kids if they didn't know the words. The other part of that is some kids might have been actually very relieved that we could help each other, because also, though it was a fun time of learning, everyone passed the test really if they got the help. So that was how others might have experienced that. And then my insight into this about how it connected to my teaching this semester was reflecting on my kids and the teaching that I got to do. They loved the interaction. They loved the activities. Something that I myself remember also. I loved that. It was an activity. She took something boring and made it into something fun, and it's something that I remember. And the little boys that I taught this semester were the same. My kids at home, same. They love activity. So I feel like it's really important to involve activity into your lesson plans. I know there's going to be times where direct instruction will be completely necessary, but activity would be great. I think it'll help a lot. The next event in my literacy memoir is my middle school. So when I was in 7th grade, I had never even gotten a C before, and I got a D on my report card in reading. I was devastated. I'd never had even a C before, and now I had this D. I had never been a reader, and we had at that time to read a certain amount of pages it was quarter, and I didn't read them. I didn't fulfill that, and I didn't ask my parents to lie for me, which I know my kids ask me that all the time. Like, oh, if I didn't get all my pages done, will you, just sign it that I did? Well, no, I will not. I never even asked my parents that, so I just took my consequence, and it was devastating for me. So that event might have been experienced differently by others. I had some kids in my class who absolutely loved to read, and they read 5 times as many pages as were necessary. So that was something that was easy for them, and they got rewarded for that and put very little extra effort into it, but still got rewarded for that, which is great for them. At the time, I thought it seemed like busy work. I didn't understand the importance of reading. At the time, I knew how to read. Everyone in our class knew how to read. Why were we reading for practice? I didn't understand why we needed to practice reading. So that was hard to understand at that time. The connections I could make between my experiences teaching now and in my future it comes more from teaching at home, teaching my kids. I have 4 boys, and 2 of them absolutely love to read. I could give them $20 to go to Barnes & Noble, and they would be the happiest kids ever. They would read all the time, and they do. My youngest one has had some reading issues, but he's actually doing better. He's in 2nd grade, so he's getting there. And he's liking to read. He wishes he could read things that he enjoyed more. My 13-year-old, on the other hand, is definitely at the same point I was. And I don't know, maybe this is something that has to do with being a 7th grader, because this is exactly the stage that I was at. But he's definitely thinking that reading is dumb. He doesn't need to practice reading. He needs to go practice his sports. So It's something that I've been working on, trying to convince him that reading is just like sports and you need to practice to get good at it, and it will help you in your future, and I want him to appreciate it. He has not, I believe, found anything that he appreciates reading, which I hadn't at the time either. So I'm trying not to take it too hard on him, but also trying to let him understand, like, but this is important. So we're working on that. That's something that I know I'll come into contact with in my teaching experiences also, is kids who might not enjoy reading and think it's worth it, and trying to convince them that it is, or that they want to try it out anyways. So there's that. And then my next event is high school. So I drew a picture of Cliff Notes. So up until high school, up all the way through high school actually, had never read a book. I'd never read a single book in high school, besides picture books and things, but never read a chapter book. I got good grades. I did very well, and I could write really well. I never read a book, however. So I used Cliff Notes for every paper I ever wrote, all the class discussions, all the tests. I got Cliff Notes and Spark Notes to pass everything. So how do I think others experience this event? So in high school, I guess we didn't really talk much about reading, but I know a lot of friends that did just read the books. You know, they'd say, hey, I got to go home, I got to read. Well, I never said that. I never did that. But I do know a lot of my friends did read the books. I know some of them didn't also. But I don't know how they really would feel in that situation, except for that it was something that we just had to do, and so they did it. So, and how they would feel about me using Cliff Notes, probably they would feel like it was unfair, or, you know, darn it, they hadn't thought about that. I don't really know. So my insights into how these events connect to my teaching this semester and, you know, in my future are, I know at this point in my life that I missed out on a great time to be reading, great information, great literature, you know, some great authors that would spark my interest now. I know I missed out on that because I didn't read in high school. And whether or not, I know we think that it's a burden at the time when we're in high school, I wish I would have. So what I really got from that is I want my students to find something that they enjoy about reading. So I understand that it won't happen with every book, every time, every kid. But if one of my students can find some sort of appreciation for some of the literature that I might have them learn anywhere, all through school, I'm not just saying high school, but if they can get something like that out of it, I will feel successful in my teaching. I don't want them to struggle reading and to just do it because they have to, although I know that will be some kids' motive, and that's also fine. Hopefully they find something in the future about reading that they enjoy, other than just doing it for a task completion, you know, for a grade. So I guess I really want in my future to try to instill in kids that reading can be fulfilling, and a great thing and a fun thing. So that's what my insights is for that. My last event is adulthood. So that is a picture of The Girl Who Drank the Moon. Was the first book that I have ever read in my life. And I just read it this semester, actually. So it was called The Girl Who Drank the Moon. I loved the book. And I'm not going to lie, I was ecstatic that I had finished a book. And especially that book. It was the first book of the semester. This was getting me on track. I finished it in time. I actually read it in 2 days, which is amazing. I'm a slower reader, so that is crazy. I didn't put it down. So I love that I finished the book. I think that it gave me confidence to keep reading for this semester. And so that has given me, confidence and encouragement to keep reading and read everything that I needed to read this semester, which is a first, which I know may sound horrible, but it is. So, that was my event, and discuss how these events might have been experienced differently by others. Okay, so, finishing your first book as an adult in your junior year of college probably doesn't seem great to other people. I will tell you an example for sure. My best friend, she laughed at me when I told her that it was the first book I read, and I was so happy. So I know she was probably happy for me, but probably a little bit like, what do you mean? Are you kidding me? So they might look down on me because I'd never read a book before. But then, and people might think I'm not smart because I don't read. Well, that's up to them. But then the other side of the spectrum is, I had Donna, who, my instructor, Dr. Blotowicz, she was ecstatic that I had finished the book. Even though it was the first one I ever read, she was so excited with me. I emailed her when I finished at, 10 p.m. that night and was just so excited. She had given me a book that I read from start to finish and loved, and so she shared that experience with me and her excitement, and she shared my excitement with me, which was pretty cool. I had someone to share it with. So, and then my connections. So, because of this, I'm super excited to share the books that I read this semester. Granted, they're the first books that I've read, really. So, I'm hoping to broaden my book knowledge. But as far as what I have read this semester, I'm so excited. I'm so excited to share all of these books with everyone I know. I want everyone to read them. My kids, I want to share them with my future classes. I want to share the excitement that I have. And I want kids to know, I might have a 6th grade classroom and be able to tell someone, hey, I never read of my first book until I was in college, and I was, I'm not going to lie, almost done with college. So that might be able to help someone know that they can start reading whenever. It's never too late. The other thing is I honestly dread teaching literature, teaching reading to kids. And so that I can start here with this excitement and try to move forward with that. I'm still scared. Don't get me wrong. I'm still scared to teach reading, but I feel like with this excitement, it will be much easier and I'll enjoy it. So I'm excited for that too. Scared and excited. So that's my literacy events, and reflecting on all of it, I know each piece of literacy in my life has a great, I don't know how you would say it. It has an impact on everything about reading for me. So I can look back now and reflect on that and say, like, hey, this is why I probably never read in high school, because I was so devastated about reading in junior high. So I figured something else out, how to get through. And as a child, it was mostly fun. So that was fine. And then as an adult now, I'm learning I want to be excited about teaching it. So I should probably try to be excited about it. And I've opened up my mind and allowed myself to be excited about reading, which I think is why I am. So there's that. So next it says, give 3 specific examples of what you will do in your future classroom community to support students' literacy, learning, and culturally responsive ways, excuse me. So, based on those reflections, number one, I'm going to make sure that I have activity with my reading. I don't want to make it boring. I want it to be memorable. I want it to be fun. I want these kids to be able to look back and say, hey, we did our spelling words and pudding. So that's something fun. So I want to incorporate activities into them. My second thing is, after my experiences in 7th grade and reflecting upon that, I don't want to just assign a certain amount of pages to be read. So I wanted to assign a text that's specifically important for our class and what we're learning and what we're doing. I want to be able to discuss it with them. I want them to know that what they're reading, even though they don't enjoy it maybe, is for a purpose. So where I thought it was busy work, I want them to know that there is a purpose behind this, and we're going to discuss it. And, so that's number 2. My third example that I will do is I want to keep a variety of books available to my students, or be able to get them to a source that can find a different book or a book that they might be looking for. I want to let them try to find something that they love, and I want to be a part of that. I understand that everyone may not love reading, but I do want them to understand the importance and the necessity of reading, and not just for a grade, but for understanding, and I want them to be able to do that. So I want to keep a variety of books in my classroom, as well as be knowledgeable about resources to give them to find other books if I can't find them for them. Now I'm going to close with what I learned about myself as a teacher from this critical reflection activity. So what I learned about myself as a teacher is I think I'm a little bit more into reading than I thought I ever would be. I learned that I don't just want to teach my students. I call them my kids already. I don't want to just teach my students for a job. I love what I'm learning to do. I love kids, and I love that I will have an impact on them, and I want to have an impact on them, and I want it to be positive. So I think that literature is a way that I can try to have that positive impact on them. I also learned, just from some of the teaching experiences, that I can be flexible. So, in the spur of the moment, you have to switch something. I switched it. Or, we need to change something that we read. We can change something that we read, and that's fine. So I learned that also. Also, I learned for myself as a teacher that I probably want to teach a higher level grade. I want to engage in discussions and meaningful discussions, and I'm not saying that you don't have meaningful discussions at younger ages. I'm just saying I want to try to dive into some very meaningful literature, and that interests me. And so that's something that maybe I will want to do. So, that's it. That's my reflection. So, sorry for the poor quality of the video, but thanks for this semester. I actually had a lot of fun and learned a lot.